Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. Shannon, you're up first.
So I did a quick count this morning. We're sitting right at about 10 active cases. We need to check in with a few people to see how they're doing on their symptom status and what they were doing. We do have, I think, 7 pending tests that we got from the hospital yesterday afternoon. We are using the KVHE contact tracers for all of the contacts of positives. We call the positive cases ourselves, but there are so many people that are contacts of positives that are quarantined, we can't keep up with the volume and make all those phone calls ourselves. So we have been routing this through KVHE contact tracers. We've been letting people know whenever they're close contacts of positives that it will either be us or it will be the state calling them, that the state phone call is not a fake phone call, it's really them calling to do the check-in with them. And I know that KVHE has been doing it because whenever one of those contacts has symptoms or has some needs, like they're running low on groceries or something like that at home, they'll send an email to us and let us know that so we can get a hold of that person and get in touch with them. So I know they're making the phone calls, and I can see the notes in the disease reporting system too. So over the weekend, there were a couple of positive cases. Upon calling them and doing some contact tracing, we found out that it was affecting one of the school districts. I called KVHE and talked with an epidemiologist, got their guidance on what to do because it was a new situation for us to handle. It wasn't one that we had come across yet. They gave me about 2 or 3 options of what we could do to handle the situation for the school. I contacted the school and went over that with them, gave them the options. So the options were, because the students were at school during their infectious period, and wanted them to play sports while they were having symptoms.
2 of them.
There were 2 positives, and they were both at school. One played sports, one didn't. One was just at the school. So the options that the epidemiologist gave me were if there was a definite 6-foot distance in the classrooms where you could tell exactly which students were sitting to the side to side or in front of the student, only those students would need to quarantine. And it would make it even better for each class, especially whenever it's the upper grades that are moving room to room. If they have assigned seating, it makes it easier for the teachers to help do that contact tracing. I was told they didn't know if there was assigned seating. They didn't know. And they don't do assigned seating at lunch, which, I mean, they go outside for lunch, but they use it in groups. So we went over the options. We called back and forth over an hour and a half, 2-hour period, and the decision was made, since they weren't sure about the contact tracing in the classrooms, to just go ahead and quarantine all of the high school staff, and they included the junior high because some of the teachers teach both junior high and high school. So that was the decision that the school told me that they wanted to go with. So I provided them a blanket quarantine letter, told them that they could use portions of that letter to notify the school or the students and the teachers of the quarantine. So that was what was done over the weekend. Yesterday morning, I got a call back from the superintendent and the principal, and they said they had talked with some of the teachers, felt like they would be able to do the contact tracing, that there is assigned seating in most of the classrooms, most of the kids sit in the same seat if there's not assigned seating. And I said, okay, if you can get a list from the teachers of what students sat next to the ones that tested positive, and you can give that to me with parent name and phone number so we can contact them, I'm fine with that. The volleyball team has to quarantine no matter what, because that was the recommendation from KVHE, because they traveled to another town, and it's a sport, they're huddling up, they're sitting on the bench, they share a locker room, they rode bus all together. That was the reasoning for quarantining the volleyball team. So the whole volleyball team still had to quarantine no matter what. And then the close contacts from the classrooms, and I was able to get contacts from the students for lunch. We compiled that list. They sent me all of the names and phone numbers. I started to call yesterday, and then they called back and asked what I was doing. And I said, well, you called this morning and said you wanted to do contact tracing and not have the whole junior high and high school quarantined. So I was making the phone calls to let those parents know that only their student was quarantined. If they had a sibling that was in junior high or high school that was not on our list, that they were able to come back to school. And they acted like they had no idea why I was doing that. So then I had no idea what was going on because that was what they had called and told me they wanted to do yesterday morning. So I said, okay, I'm not calling anymore on this list because I called 7 families and went over all this stuff with them, and now you're saying that's not what you want to do.
What do they want to do?
I don't know. We never got to, this is what we're going to do, and I finally said, if you can't make a decision right now, I'm not calling any more of these people to get more people wound up about it. I know it's frustrating to have an entire high school and an entire junior high quarantine, but they're already halfway through the quarantine because their exposure date was on September 1st. Yesterday they were already a week in. They only have a week left. So I said, if you can't make a decision on what you want to do, then just leave it as all of them are still quarantined, have them do the remote learning for a week, and then have them come back to the school if they're not symptomatic. So that was the end of that phone call with them, and I still don't know. I know they were talking about having a board meeting last night, so I don't know what they decided at the board meeting. Because I didn't have an email or a phone call this morning when I got to work.
How many people do you think were on the list that they gave you?
Probably about 21 or 22.
And they gave you that list, and then you started the process, and then they called you back and said, basically, why are you calling these people? Because if that second phone call wouldn't happen, then there'd be 21 people quarantined, and the rest of the school could be going back.
And they started in yesterday. The phone call with them was very frustrating because, like I said, I didn't call them yesterday morning and change anything. They called me and wanted to change it, and I told them that if they felt comfortable with being able to contact trace in the classrooms, that I was okay with that. I told them that. And that was one of the options that I had given them over the weekend. And at the time over the weekend, they didn't feel comfortable with it. So that's the reason for the decision that was made over the weekend. They had decided they weren't comfortable with the contact tracing for the classrooms. That's why they just quarantined everybody. Because they felt like if they weren't comfortable with it, at least that way it covered everybody where they wouldn't have a bigger problem 2 weeks down the line if they missed somebody. So that's why I gave them the quarantine letter that they got for the blanket for the whole junior high and high school. That was the purpose for that, because they didn't know if they could do the contact tracing for the classrooms. But then they called back and said they could. Well, then they, yesterday on the phone, wanted me to do an order to rescind the quarantine order. Well, the document I have is an official document. I can't just make a rescind order up. I don't have one. So I don't know if that's part of the issue. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's kind of like, if it breaks out in Stafford, St. John, or Maxville, I mean, it's up to the school to give you a list of people on the contact tracing as far as who's within 6 foot, and then you just go from there. But if they don't give you any names, then you have to shut everybody down in the school, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then as far as volleyball or football, that's the KDHE. If one kid in there has it, then the team's just 14.
So the 2 instances where that has happened so far in our county, I have called and spoke with an epidemiologist. One was for football and the second one was for volleyball, and both times they told me that the team would have to quarantine because of, I mean, of course football is a contact sport. You're in each other's face up on the line, you're tackling each other, you're breathing in each other's face. So that one, I feel like, is kind of a given. Volleyball, I wasn't sure on because it's not as a full contact sport as like football or basketball is. But they said since they were all contained on the bus together and that person had symptoms at the time, and then, you know, they huddle up to talk during timeouts or before the game or after the game, they're all sitting together on the bench. The game that they played at had 3 extra teams at it, and they had to switch locker rooms. So, I mean, I had to notify the other 3 counties, and KDHE's recommendation was for the whole team to quarantine, including coaches.
Good.
Are they doing anything different in football this year, like a plastic shield on their face mask?
So they can do that, but the epidemiologist that I spoke with regarding the football said that even if they have those face masks, it wouldn't matter.
I thought that'd be pretty,
It reduces risk, but it doesn't make it null and void, so you would still have to quarantine them, is what they told me.
So if you had, say somebody on the football team or even a volleyball team, if they said, you know, we've got 20 kids out for football, I broke them up into 5-person groups, so I have 4 different groups.
So if they did that and they knew which kids were practicing with which kids, then you could do it that way, because the way they had also explained it to me was if it was a defensive player and you had offensive practice and defensive practice, you could just quarantine that portion of the team instead of the whole team.
Okay.
But around here, we don't have a big enough team. I mean, our schools are small enough that they're all practicing together, so that was the reason for quarantining the whole team. Whenever they're not separated out in groups like that, where you know what kids were practicing with what kids.
and they probably don't keep their helmet on all the time. We never do. Kids would
Yeah.
rebel on that one.
Well, and whenever it's hot outside, you just want to take it off anyways, so.
Yeah, and you definitely practice together. There's no way little schools aren't
Yeah.
practicing all together
Whenever you've only got 16 people.
unless they're
out
having
there
individual
practice
workouts.
together.
Yeah.
Especially whenever you're gonna do contact drills, so.
You didn't get much argument from the football team, did you?
No.
I know you said this at the beginning on the numbers. How many active cases do we have now?
This morning, whenever I counted, you're sitting right around 10 or 11, but we need to call a few of them and check on their symptom status, so it might be less than that, and we still have 7 pending tests from yesterday.
How many new positives was it since, say, Monday?
Over the weekend, we got 4.
What was since last Friday?
From Friday to Monday.
And that's included in the 7, or additional 2. You said you have 7 pending,
7 pending, those ones are pending from yesterday.
and then you have another 4.
And then we got the 4 new ones over the weekend, from Friday to Monday.
So those 4 would be the 10 or 11.
Yes.
Do the KDHE numbers follow yours, or they seem a little different?
They are a little different. So we get faxes from the providers that are doing the tests. So whether it's done at Stafford Hospital or one of the surrounding counties, we get a fax with the result. So we're able to count our result up quicker than KDHE is able to. If it is done through KDHE, it gets populated into the state total quicker than if it's done at a private lab. They're waiting for the private labs to send all of their results, and then they're having to put all of those results into the system and count them. And a handful of times, I'm able to email them and say, please check, and give them like a bunch of record numbers so they can update it, and which I did at the end of last week, and they did, I noticed, count a bunch of those, and it went up to
We
around
had 44 last night, is that accurate, you think?
It's just a tiny bit behind what we're at right now. So that's the reasoning for them being a little bit off from our numbers, is just because we're able to count ours up quicker than what they're able to populate in.
It's not a disagreement on tests.
No, it's not a disagreement on tests, it's just them being a smidge behind getting it loaded into their system so it can come on it. Since they've got everybody's account.
I think the majority of the cases that we've had, people have got over front of ours, I mean, it's been pretty, we haven't, I don't think we've had too many hospitalizations.
We really haven't. I think we total had about maybe 4 hospitalizations out of all of them.
I mean, the 14 days, I mean, are they usually getting over the 14 days and having 3 days free, you know?
It's varying person to person. We've had people that have been in isolation for over a month to get over it, and then we've had people that within a 10-day time frame are not having any symptoms. So it's kind of just depending on how their immune system can handle it. But, I mean, the people that were hospitalized were the ones that obviously had the hardest go of it. They had the worst symptoms. We have had several people that have had some pretty, not severe symptoms, but, I mean, obviously, they had a rough time getting over it because it took them 20-plus days to be able to finish with isolation. And then we've had a lot of people that have had minor symptoms, where they felt pretty bad for a handful of days and then bounced back pretty good.
About asymptomatic, these people, have you had
We
any?
had 2. So those ones, we just go from 10 days from their positive test date for their isolation and their rooms.
If somebody's going in to have surgery and they have to do that, does that get counted in your testing rate?
Yes, it does.
I know if you have your cataracts removed, you gotta go get a test. I didn't even know if they
Some
informed you.
places are starting now to not do the testing unless you're around somebody that's symptomatic. They're making you do a 14-day quarantine before your procedure now, some places are. So it's very facility to facility, whatever their policy is.
Test would be more accurate than doing that.
Yeah, probably. Another thing I mentioned at we had a meeting yesterday, with our lunch group that we discussed COVID with. I brought up that a lot of places are relying on temperature checks right now, and I specifically talked to the schools about this. They're doing the temperature checks, but signs and symptoms also need to be addressed because we have had a vast majority of our positives not ever have a fever. So a fever is not the hallmark sign of this. I mean, we need to be asking, most of our people across the board have had headache, body aches, sore throat, and a lot of them recently have had a loss of taste and smell. And usually if somebody says, I can't taste or smell my food, I can almost be like, well, that one's going to come back positive. And almost every single time it has. And that symptom is the last one to go usually. It takes a few months for that one to come back, so we don't usually go off of that symptom, we'll go off of their other symptoms because that one takes a long time to get back. So I told the schools that it may be a good idea to work in at some point asking signs and symptoms and maybe letting the parents of the little kids know because they're not going to be able to really tell you exactly what's going on with them.
Sounds good.
If the Maxville school, I think their contact person is probably their superintendent, but where he doesn't live in Maxville, he goes back to Derby on weekends, and I think he's been gone because his wife had hip surgery or something. Do they need to notify you that this is the new contact person, you know, that you need to contact, like, if they wanted to change it from the superintendent to the principal, they need to contact you and let you know at phone number 2 call.
Yes, and Becky Filbert, their nurse, has gotten a hold of me too, like on weekends or after hours when she hears things too, so.
And then like, when you contact the school or whatever, I mean, you kind of tell them, I need to get a list contact people. You don't put a deadline on it, you just tell them they need to get it to you as quick as
So
they
this
can.
weekend, the only thing that I said was, it would be nice to have it this weekend, because if we need people to be at home in quarantine, we need to do it, because it's a holiday weekend and people are gonna go a lot of places.
Yeah.
I don't put a deadline on it. It was, I just wanted them to understand it needed to be as promptly as possible, because I don't, if somebody is close contact of a positive, there's a high chance that they could become symptomatic and be spreading it. And there's a 2-day time frame before symptoms starts that you're contagious.
Right.
So that's why whenever we get a positive case, we try to go in as timely as we can and start talking with them to do that contact tracing, because it is important to limit spread.
Good.
And I feel like in a school where they're really close contacts and contained for a large portion of the day, it's important to get that list as quick as possible.
I think this is definitely a fluid, and everybody's learning as we go. And I think
Yes.
now the superintendents and teachers are realizing how critical it is to have basically assigned seating and
Yes.
try to keep distancing on the kids to where you can say this person.
Yes. Which, yeah, this is, with the schools in the mix now, it's going to be everybody's learning and figuring things out as we're going. And it's, I mean, every situation is gonna be a new situation that we're gonna have to figure out. I mean, we have plans in place, but we're always gonna probably tweaking them through all of this to get everything how we need to so that it works for us, so. It's just, everybody's gonna have to work together on it.
Any other questions?
So is there a definite date you're starting your maternity leave? It's just whenever the baby comes.
Whenever it comes.
So, once the baby comes, then, will basically Emily step up? And have you guys found, like, somebody that'll come in and help Emily, you know, kind of take Emily's job as she steps up to the,
So
That's
Katie is able to answer a lot of the phone call questions, and she would be able to help with making phone calls for the contact tracing too. So I've talked with them and told them if we need to call somebody in to help with phone calls or whatever, we need to get it decided, and they think that they're going to be able to handle it, especially with having the KDHE contact tracers contacting all of those contacts. It's helped immensely to do that instead of us doing that all the time.
I didn't know whether you guys were having, I feel like we're getting ready coming into the flu season, if you guys have a lot of shots you gotta give and need another RN in there to help give shots or what?
Usually, we're scheduling appointments so that we don't have a lot of people in the office at one time. So, and I mean, a flu shot, people walk in, fill their form out, and they're gone in 5 minutes. So, we are starting to get our flu shots. We're gonna advertise tomorrow that we've got them because we just got some yesterday afternoon, but today's our WIC day, so we're trying to keep the amount of people in the office down because we've got a full afternoon. I'll talk with them again about it though, because yeah, I've been a little bit concerned about how overwhelmed they may get with the flu shots on top of everything else.
But probably the opportune time will be late October, right?
Yes, the best time, I read an MMWR report, the best time they're recommending for flu shots is the end of October, beginning of November. And we are going to get a drive-through flu clinic planned for a Saturday, because we're not going to be able to go to the school districts like we have in the past, because the way that we've done it in the past is bringing kid after kid after kid into one room, and that's just not going to be feasible with everything that we've got in place for the schools. So a drive-through clinic would be easiest, and then people can obviously still walk into our clinic to get flu shots too. And we were thinking we'd plan that drive-through clinic in November, where we can hit the biggest amount of people.
But you do have, I mean, there are some people that if you get the bottom, you can call them and they can
You're gonna be the first one in to get a flu shot,
No. Nope.
For the vaccine,
Pardon?
for the vaccine, now Shannon's gonna bring 3 of them over here.
Shannon gives a really good shot for the shingles, but after that, no.
Your first one in line. Okay,
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
huh? Good luck.
On the payroll tax deal that the president had turned out, it was my understanding that if they don't withhold that, I mean, at the end of 4 months, you have to pay that back
Yeah.
in. So I mean, it's not like free money, they're just postponing when you gotta have to do it.
Postponing an inevitable.
Yeah,
So,
Is that for sure though? I mean, who knows, he could change his mind.
it's for
I mean,
sure
not
for
a-
today.
Yeah,
I mean,
as of right now.
so, Melissa recommended that you guys make a motion that we opt out of that for the employees because that's just crazy. I mean, we opt out or have them do it from September to December. Well, in January, it's gonna double for 4 months or whatever. It's
Yeah.
just. it
give them
makes-
a bonus now and then cut their pay later on.
It makes no sense.
I think that'll change, but.
Well, I do
for-
too, but
for
like
right
she
now.
said, for right now, we need to address it. Because I have had some employees ask me about it, they do not want to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Are you good with the motion?
I'm very good with it.
I'll make a motion that we opt out of the presidential executive order to defer payroll taxes for Stafford County employees.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to opt out of the presidential executive order to defer payroll taxes for Stafford County employees. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.
Did you have anything you wanted to say, Brian, or? Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
What's the election equipment trade?
you want to do the minutes real quick?
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the September 2nd meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from September 2nd. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
I finally got out to Bruce's to ask him about a trailer for my election equipment. The one I'm looking at is a 6-foot by 12-foot cargo trailer. The price would be $3,250. They've only gone up $200 since 2016. So, he's got 3 coming in. He's hoping within the next month. One is already sold. So I had him put my name on one for now, but I obviously need approval. But this would come out of my reserve fund, which I still have $11,000 in there. So it would give me enough to purchase it and then to have somebody build the shelving and for my equipment that I want in there, so.
So you'd like approval for $3,250? And what's the name of the trailer?
It's a 6 by 12 Lark cargo trailer. He said it'd be exactly like the one that Emergency Preparedness has out there.
Yeah.
So,
I make a motion that we approve, needed to buy a 6 by 12 Lark trailer for $3,250 to store election equipment in.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to allow me to spend $3,250 on an election equipment trailer from Sunfire. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Do we need to,
you just need to bring that up. If you want to leave your voting delegates the same for K-Camp, we don't have to do anything. They're having a Zoom meeting. Oh, I don't remember when it is, but
October 14th?
if you want to leave your delegates, is it Todd and Clay?
No,
Todd's the-
it's Todd and Carter.
Carrie Alder.
But if you want to change them, we can.
When is that going to be?
October 14th.
I don't think there's probably, well, I don't know.
It could be done by the corn, or cut corn.
You don't have to go anywhere anyway.
Where's that?
You take this
It's a Zoom meeting.
Oh,
Get on the computer,
okay.
log in.
I think we ought to have Kurt or Clay do that, because I don't know how to do that on the computer.
Well, I can just leave it all enough alone.
Just don't turn the camera on and go back to bed.
Yeah.
You'll leave it alone then?
Okay.
Just what he says.
I would move that we go into executive session for 5 minutes for non-elected personnel.
Second.
Okay, wait a second. All in favor for going into executive session for the board, Nita and Mike, for 5 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Have anything else for now? We will recess, I guess, for a little bit. Anything else?
Nothing now.
Okay. We will adjourn.